Two grenades land in the trench. Four Marines are about to die. Private First Class Jack Lucas is 17 years old and has been in combat for one day. He yells "grenade," shoves one Marine out of the way, and throws himself onto the first explosive. Then he reaches out, grabs the second grenade, and pulls it underneath his body. One grenade explodes. More than 250 pieces of shrapnel tear into his chest, arms, legs, and back. His body is thrown into the air. His comrades believe he is dead. But Jack Lucas is not dead. And this is not even the strangest part of his story. 3 years earlier, Jack Lucas was 14 years old when he forged his mother's signature and lied his way into the United States Marine Corps. Jack Lucas was born Jacqueline Harold Lucas on February 14, 1928, in Plymouth, North Carolina. It was a small tobacco farming town on the banks of the Roanoke River. Jack grew up big for his age. By the time he was 13, he stood nearly 6 feet tall and weighed over 200 pounds. He played football at Salemburg High School and was captain of the team. He was strong, aggressive, and fearless. But he was restless. He wanted something more than what a small town in North Carolina could offer. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Jack was 13 years old. He listened to President Franklin Roosevelt's speech on the radio. He watched older boys from his town enlist. He wanted to join them, but he was too young. So he waited. He kept playing football. He went to school. But the war consumed him. He read every newspaper article. He listened to every radio broadcast. By the summer of 1942, Jack could not wait anymore. He decided to enlist. He was 14 years old. Jack knew the Marines would not take him at his real age, so he forged his mother's signature on the enlistment papers. Some accounts say his mother consented. Others say he did it without her knowledge. Either way, Jack walked into a recruiting station in August 1942 and lied about his age. He said he was 17. The recruiter looked at him. Jack was big, strong, and mature-looking. The recruiter believed him. Jack was accepted into the Marine Corps Reserve. He shipped out to boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina. He was one of the youngest Marines in American history. Boot camp was brutal. Jack thrived. He was physically strong and mentally tough. He finished near the top of his class. After graduation, he was assigned to posts in Florida and North Carolina. He qualified as a heavy machine gun crewman. In late 1943, he was transferred to the 5th Amphibious Corps at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Jack thought he was finally going to see combat. He was wrong. In early 1944, someone discovered Jack's real age. He was only 15 years old. The Marine Corps immediately pulled him from combat duty and assigned him to rear area work. Jack was devastated. For nearly a year, Jack sat in Hawaii while other Marines shipped out to fight. He worked supply depots. He loaded trucks. He watched combat veterans return from places like Tarawa, Saipan, and Peleliu. The stories they told made Jack furious. He had not joined the Marines to sit in a warehouse. He had joined to fight. By early January 1945, Jack had made a decision. If the Marines would not send him to combat, he would send himself. On January 5, 1945, Jack left his unit without permission and snuck onto the USS Duel, an attack transport bound for Iwo Jima. He was 17 years old. He had just committed desertion. Jack hid on the ship for several days. He slept in storage compartments. He stole food. Eventually, he was discovered. The ship's officers debated what to do with him. They could arrest him for desertion. They could send him back to Hawaii in chains. But the Duel was already at sea, and Iwo Jima was only days away. The officers made a decision. They would let Jack fight. They assigned him to Company C, 1st Battalion, 26th Marines, 5th Marine Division. Jack was given a rifle and told to stay out of trouble. He was going to war. On February 19, 1945, Jack Lucas landed on Iwo Jima. The beach was chaos. Japanese artillery and mortars rained down on the Marines. Machine gun fire ripped through the landing craft. Bodies floated in the surf. Jack waded ashore and dove into the black volcanic sand. He had never been in combat before. He was terrified, but he moved forward. He followed his squad inland, away from the beach. The 5th Marine Division was tasked with capturing Mount Suribachi, the volcano on the southern tip of the island. It was one of the most heavily defended positions in the Pacific. Jack's first day on Iwo Jima was a nightmare. Everywhere he looked, Marines were dying. Artillery shells exploded in the sand, throwing bodies into the air. Snipers picked off men as they tried to advance. The Japanese fought from tunnels, pillboxes, and hidden bunkers. They appeared out of nowhere, fired, and disappeared. Jack fired his rifle at shadows. He dug into the sand and prayed. By nightfall, he was still alive. Hundreds of other Marines were not. Jack spent his first night on Iwo Jima in a shallow foxhole, listening to the wounded scream. On the morning of February 20th, Jack's second day of combat, his squad was ordered to move toward an airstrip. They were part of a 4-man fire team. Jack and 3 other Marines moved carefully through the volcanic terrain, scanning for enemy positions. Suddenly, they spotted a Japanese pillbox. It was a concrete bunker with a machine gun nest inside. The Marines took cover in a nearby trench and prepared to assault the position. Then they saw 11 Japanese soldiers in a parallel trench connected to the pillbox by a tunnel. The Marines opened fire. The Japanese returned fire. Rifle rounds cracked overhead. Jack fired his Moan rifle and hit 2 Japanese soldiers. Then his rifle jammed. Jack cursed and dropped into the trench to unjam the weapon. He pulled back the bolt and tried to clear the chamber. Then he saw them, 2 grenades. They were lying on the floor of the trench right in front of his feet. Jack did not know how long they had been there. 2 seconds, 5 seconds. It did not matter. In another second or two, they would explode and kill everyone in the trench. Jack yelled, "Grenade!" He shoved the Marine next to him out of the way. Then he dropped onto the first grenade and jammed it into the soft volcanic sand with his rifle. He reached out with his left hand, grabbed the second grenade and pulled it underneath his body. He pressed it into the sand as hard as he could. Jack braced himself. One of the grenades exploded. The blast lifted Jack into the air and threw him onto his back. Shrapnel tore through his right arm, wrist, leg, thigh, and chest. More than 250 pieces of metal ripped into his body. The pain was beyond description. Jack could not breathe. He could not scream. He lay on his back, staring at the sky, holding the second grenade in his left hand. It had not exploded. Jack's 3 comrades were unharmed. They looked at Jack and believed he was dead. There was no way anyone could survive that blast. They left the trench and continued the assault. Jack was alone. He was still conscious. He could feel the blood pouring out of his wounds. He tried to move but could not. He tried to call for help but had no voice. He lay there holding the unexploded grenade, waiting to die. Then another Marine unit moved through the area. One of them saw Jack and shouted for a corpsman. They rushed over and began treating his wounds. Jack was still alive. Let us know in the comments where you are watching this from. Are you in the United States, Germany, the United Kingdom, or somewhere else? We would love to know who is keeping these stories alive. Jack was carried back to the beach and loaded onto a landing craft. He was transferred to the hospital ship USS Samaritan. Doctors worked frantically to stabilize him. His injuries were catastrophic. He had lost massive amounts of blood. His right arm was mangled. His chest was torn open. Shrapnel was embedded throughout his body. The doctors did not think he would survive the night. Jack survived. Jack was evacuated from Iwo Jima to a field hospital in Guam, then to another hospital in Hawaii, and finally to Oak Knoll Naval Hospital in Oakland, California. Over the next 7 months, Jack underwent 21 surgeries. Doctors removed as much shrapnel as they could, but more than 200 pieces remained inside his body. Some fragments were too close to vital organs to remove safely. Others were too deep. Jack would carry that shrapnel for the rest of his life. It set off metal detectors at airports. It shifted under his skin. It caused him chronic pain. The recovery was agonizing. Jack spent months in bed, unable to walk. His right arm was nearly useless. His chest was covered in scars. He was 17 years old and looked like he had been through a meat grinder. But he was alive. And he was a hero. Word of Jack's actions on Iwo Jima spread quickly. The Marine Corps wanted to honor him. On September 18, 1945, Jack was promoted back to private first class and medically discharged due to his injuries. On October 5, 1945, Jack was invited to the White House. President Harry Truman presented Jack Lucas with the Medal of Honor. Jack stood in the East Room of the White House, surrounded by other Medal of Honor recipients, including his company commander, Captain Robert Dunlap. Jack was 17 years old. He was the youngest Marine to ever receive the Medal of Honor. He was the youngest service member to receive it in World War II. And he was one of the few men to ever receive the medal for throwing himself on a grenade and surviving. Most recipients of that particular honor received it posthumously. Jack received it in person. If you are enjoying this story and want more untold accounts from World War II, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We are bringing you stories that most history books never covered. After receiving the Medal of Honor, Jack tried to adjust to civilian life. It was not easy. He was 17 years old with a body full of shrapnel and a chest full of medals. He did not know what to do with himself. He had spent 3 years obsessed with going to war. Now the war was over and he had no plan. Jack enrolled at High Point University in North Carolina. He studied business. He traveled the country giving speeches to veterans groups and military units. He tried to live a normal life. But Jack was not built for normal. In 1961, at the age of 33, Jack enlisted in the United States Army. He wanted to become a paratrooper. His friends thought he was insane. Why would a Medal of Honor recipient with a body full of shrapnel join the Army as a private? Jack had his reasons. He wanted to conquer his fear of heights. He wanted to prove he was still capable of serving. And he wanted to see if he could survive another war. Jack was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He went through paratrooper training. During one of his first training jumps, Jack's main parachute failed to deploy. He pulled his reserve chute. It also failed. Jack was falling from 3,500 feet with no parachute. Other paratroopers watched in horror. Jack hit the ground at terminal velocity. He should have been killed instantly. Instead, Jack rolled upon impact, absorbed the force, and stood up. He walked away with minor injuries. Witnesses could not believe it. Jack later joked that the ground was softer than the grenade blast. People started calling him Indestructible Jack Lucas. Jack wanted to deploy to Vietnam. He volunteered multiple times. The Army refused. Jack was too valuable as a symbol. He was a Medal of Honor recipient. He was a living legend. The Army was not going to risk losing him in another war. Jack was frustrated but accepted the decision. He served 4 years in the 82nd Airborne Division and was discharged in 1965. He had served in 2 branches of the military, survived a grenade blast, survived a parachute failure, and earned the nation's highest military honor. He was 37 years old. Jack spent the rest of his life as a businessman and public speaker. He opened several businesses. He traveled extensively. He spoke to veterans, active duty troops, and students. He told his story over and over. He never downplayed what happened on Iwo Jima. He never claimed to be fearless. He admitted he was terrified, but he also said he did what he had to do. His comrades were in danger. He acted. It was that simple. Jack believed heroism was not about being unafraid. It was about acting in spite of fear. Jack married and had children. He lived in Hattiesburg, Mississippi for many years. He remained active in veterans organizations. He attended Medal of Honor conventions and reunions with other recipients. He was known for his sense of humor and his foul mouth. He cussed constantly and laughed often. He showed kids his scars and told them stories about the war. He never lost his love for the Marine Corps. He never regretted enlisting at 14. He never regretted throwing himself on those grenades. He said he would do it again if he had to. On June 5, 2008, Jack Lucas died of leukemia at the age of 80. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. His funeral was attended by hundreds of veterans, Marines, and civilians. His casket was carried by an honor guard. A Marine bugler played taps. Jack was laid to rest among the other heroes who gave everything for their country. His headstone reads, Jacqueline H. Lucas, Private First Class, United States Marine Corps, Medal of Honor, World War II. Jack Lucas lived for 62 years after Iwo Jima. He survived injuries that should have killed him. He survived a parachute failure that should have killed him. He survived leukemia longer than doctors expected. People joked that Jack was immortal, but he was not immortal. He was just stubborn. He refused to die when he was 17, and he refused to die quietly at 80. He lived every year as a reminder that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act when everything inside you screams to run. The trench on Iwo Jima where Jack threw himself on those grenades is long gone. The volcanic sand has shifted. The island is quiet now, but the story remains. 2 grenades, 1 boy, 1 explosion, and the miracle that he walked away. Jack Lucas did not just survive that day. He survived everything that came after. And in doing so, he proved that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to die. The numbers from Jack Lucas's life tell a story that seems impossible. 14 years old when he enlisted by lying about his age. 17 years old when he threw himself on 2 grenades. 250 pieces of shrapnel embedded in his body. 21 surgeries over 7 months of recovery. 3,500 feet he fell when both parachutes failed, and he walked away. 80 years old when he finally died, 62 years after Iwo Jima. 1 Medal of Honor, 2 branches of military service, 3 years of obsession with going to war before he ever saw combat. Jack was one of only 21 Marines to receive the Medal of Honor during the Battle of Iwo Jima. He was the youngest Marine to ever receive the medal in the history of the United States military. He was one of only a handful of men to receive it for throwing himself on a grenade and surviving to accept it in person. Most men who performed that act received the medal posthumously, presented to their families after they were buried. Jack stood in the White House at 17 years old and shook President Truman's hand. He carried the weight of that medal and the memories of that day for the rest of his life. The Battle of Iwo Jima lasted 36 days. Nearly 7,000 Americans were killed. Another 20,000 were wounded. The Japanese lost over 18,000 soldiers. The island was less than 8 square miles. Every inch of it was soaked in blood. Jack landed on the 2nd day and was wounded on the 3rd. He spent less than 48 hours in combat on Iwo Jima. In that time, he saved 3 lives, earned the Medal of Honor, and changed his life forever. The cost was a body full of shrapnel, a lifetime of pain, and memories that never faded. Jack Lucas's story raises uncomfortable questions. Should a 14-year-old be allowed to join the military? Should a boy be sent to war? The answer is no. But Jack did not wait for permission. He lied. He forged documents. He snuck onto a ship. He forced his way into combat. And when the moment came, he saved 3 lives by sacrificing his own body. Does that justify what he did? Does his heroism erase the fact that he was a child when he enlisted? These are not easy questions. What is clear is that Jack believed he was doing the right thing. He was not naive. He knew war was dangerous. He knew men died, but he also believed his country needed him. He believed he had something to offer, and on February 20th, 1945, he proved it. He acted without hesitation. He did not think about the consequences. He did not calculate his chances of survival. He saw 2 grenades and knew what he had to do. That is the definition of courage. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear control you. Jack spent the rest of his life telling that story. He spoke to thousands of people. He answered the same questions over and over. Why did you do it? Were you afraid? Would you do it again? Jack's answers never changed. Yes, he was afraid. Yes, he would do it again. And no, he did not think of himself as a hero. He said he did what any Marine would have done. He said the real heroes were the men who did not come home. Jack carried guilt for surviving. He carried guilt for the men who died on Iwo Jima while he lived. That guilt never left him. Jack Lucas was not supposed to be on Iwo Jima. He was supposed to be in Hawaii, working supply depots and waiting for the war to end. But Jack refused to wait. He forced his way into history. And when history gave him a choice between his life and the lives of his comrades, he chose them. That choice should have killed him. The fact that it did not is a miracle. The fact that he lived another 62 years and survived a parachute failure and cancer is almost unbelievable. But it happened. Jack Lucas happened. His story is not just about grenades and medals. It is about a boy who wanted to fight. It is about a teenager who lied his way into war. It is about a man who carried shrapnel in his body and pain in his heart for the rest of his life. It is about courage, sacrifice, and survival. And it is about the cost of heroism. Jack Lucas saved 3 lives on Iwo Jima, but he paid for it. He paid with his body. He paid with his youth. He paid with decades of pain, and he would tell you it was worth it. The grenades are gone. The trench is gone. The boy who threw himself on them is gone. But the story remains. It remains because it reminds us that courage is not about being the strongest or the bravest. It is about doing what needs to be done when no one else can. Jack Lucas was 14 when he lied his way into the Marines. He was 17 when he threw himself on 2 grenades, and he was 80 when he finally died. In between, he lived a life that proved one thing. Some people refuse to quit. Some people refuse to die. Some people are just too stubborn to let the world tell them no.